There are 400 billion suns in our galaxy, yet a deafening silence of space with no intelligence found anywhere except Earth. Well, folks, Brian Cox had an interesting say on this, so subscribe now and let's begin. Mathematical paradox. Enrico Fermi was the absolute behemoth of modern science. Being a legendary Italian physicist, he laid the very foundations of 20th century physics while mapping out the architecture of the quantum world and creating frameworks that every physics student on Earth studies today and will continue to study for hundreds of years from now. Despite a lifetime of unlocking the deepest, darkest secrets of the subatomic universe, the concept that permanently made his name popular in the world of scientists was a casual, almost a throwaway question that he asked over a simple lunch break back in the 1950s. He was looking up at the night sky and pondering the sheer, incomprehensible vastness of the cosmos. That's where Fermi simply asked, "Where is everybody?" In order to understand the terrifying weight of this question, we have to look at the raw mathematics of our cosmic neighborhood, because it's gigantic. Let's just ignore hundreds of billions of other galaxies that are in the universe. Moreover, confine the scope of, let's shorten the scope entirely to our home, which is the Milky Way. Through decades of advanced astronomical observation, we now know that our galaxy is roughly 400 billion individual suns, and thanks to modern space telescopes, we know almost every single one of those sun-hosting planetary systems. We are now sitting inside a galaxy that contains trillions of planets. Moreover, the Milky Way has existed for over the entire lifespan of the universe itself, which is over 10 billion years. There's a huge amount of real estate, and there has been an abundance of time for biological evolution to take hold, just like it did with us. There has also been enough time for advanced civilizations to develop, conquer their homeworlds, and even expand across stars. The Fermi Paradox is this chilling realization that despite the mathematical certainty that there should be empires stretching across the Milky Way, we see absolutely zero evidence of them. There is no radio signal, no alien megastructures that are blocking out the light, and no spaceship as we saw in the Project Hail Mary movie. There is just an empty, silent void. This massive contradiction is one of the greatest intellectual exercises in human history, which is as big as the understanding of our own existence and how we were formed into this biological evolution. Chain of luck. Perhaps the most interesting answer to the Fermi Paradox is simple. We don't see anyone because no one else has ever even evolved. Life simply never got complex anywhere else as it did in this galaxy. With trillions of planets out there, why would we assume Earth is so special in the first place? In order to know that, we have to look at the only data point we currently possess, which is ourselves. What did it physically take to produce an industrial civilization on this specific ball of rock compared to others? The most vital ingredient we required was time. It should be uninterrupted and perfectly stable. Geological evidence proves that microscopic life was present on Earth at least 3.8 billion years ago, and the planet itself is 500 million years old. This means that the total initial spark of life happened relatively quickly, as soon as Earth cooled down, but from that microscopic spark, it took 3.8 billion years to go from some single small cell to a species that was capable of building a civilization. This evolutionary journey took nearly 1/3 of the entire age of the universe itself. Therefore, it is the only possible answer to the paradox that the Earth is a freakish statistical anomaly. It may be unique in the Milky Way because the climate and geological conditions here remain stable enough for long enough and for slow biological progression to occur. 4 billion years of broken stability is a huge miracle, and we live in an incredibly violent and chaotic universe. Over the last 4 billion years, our sun's energy output has shifted, but it never shifted so radically that it boiled the oceans or froze the globe. The galaxy is filled with other threats, like supernova explosions that can send gamma radiation, yet miraculously no massive star close enough to Earth has ever exploded in the last 4 billion years. We can call this luck, but we have also suffered catastrophic asteroid impacts like the one that wiped out the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. There's not been an impact large enough to completely destroy the unbroken chain of life here. There may be billions of planets in different zones of the stars with liquid water oceans, but perhaps none of them have managed to dodge cosmic bullets for 4 billion years straight. And that is how we were formed. Invisible watchers. But there's another side of this paradox which flips the entire concept upside down. The interesting thing is that it isn't a paradox at all because they are already here. We just cannot see them. Yes, we're talking about an extraterrestrial alien civilization. If an alien civilization is 1,000,000 years older than humanity, its technology would be so far beyond our comprehension that it would appear as magic. Just think about modern technology and let's date it back to early human civilization. They would think that we are magicians using smartphones, guns, and other items like that. The aliens likely wouldn't arrive in massive, cinematic flying saucers that show up on military radar. They could send microscopic nanomachines into our solar system. If the void of space is filled with alien surveillance probes that are the size of a grain of sand or even an iPhone, we would have absolutely no way of discovering this technology. We might simply be fooled into thinking that we are alone in the universe. On the other hand, maybe the galaxy is just too vast. The physical distances between stars are so big that even if a highly advanced civilization exists and has the most powerful radio transmitters allowed by the laws of physics, the signal would naturally degrade and wouldn't come towards us by the time those radio waves travel thousands of years to reach our telescopes on Earth. They would be diluted into the background static of the cosmos. However, there is another counter-argument to this idea called the space travel argument, which relies on the concept of one-human probes. Imagine an advanced civilization decides that biological space travel is too difficult. Instead, they build a highly capable artificial intelligence, which is a self-replicating robotic probe, and then launch it to a nearby solar system. Once it goes there, the machine uses local asteroids for raw materials and even builds 2 perfect copies of itself and then sends those copies to 2 more star systems. This triggers an unstoppable chain reaction of huge growth. 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, and it just goes on and on. Mathematical models prove that even using conservative travel speeds like our current rocketry technology, a single civilization could basically blanket a galaxy the size of the Milky Way with probes in roughly 100 million years. While 100 million years sounds too long to a human, it is just a blink of an eye for a galactic timescale. The tariff I can claim is this: if a single successful self-replicating machine had been launched by anyone anywhere in the Milky Way over the last 10 billion years, the galaxy should be currently swarming with them because we see no evidence of these probes. We can logically say that no civilization has ever survived long enough to even build one. Now let's talk about another interesting possibility, but before we talk about it, subscribe to the channel because we're about to blow your mind. Ancient civilizations' existence. And now, to the most interesting one of them all. What if the galaxy is already packed with advanced civilizations, but they deliberately choose to be completely hidden away from us? This concept is also called the dark forest hypothesis, or even the quarantine civilization. According to this theory, when civilizations become so technologically advanced that they are outside the scope of our understanding, they realize that the universe is a dark, predatory space, which we know is true. And to survive, they must remain completely silent. They hide, so they end up hiding their heat signatures, stop all broadcasting of radio waves, and even observe strict discipline so they don't draw attention to a more hostile and aggressive neighbor. It is logically possible that they are hiding in the smartest way possible in the cosmos. However, given our own human history, it is incredibly difficult to believe that intelligence naturally blends towards silence. Humanity has certainly never made any attempt to hide. We have loudly broadcast television and radio signals out in the void for centuries. We even beamed the Arecibo message directly at a distant star cluster. We launched deep space probes like the Voyager, complete with a golden record and a pulsar map that literally provides the exact cosmic address of our solar system for anyone out there to find. At least at our current stage of development, we haven't acquired the wisdom or the fear to remain silent, which other civilizations, which are much more advanced than us, have. We have basically knocked on the cosmic door at every single opportunity. The great astronomer Carl Sagan even argued that perhaps any civilization that is capable of surviving long enough to build interstellar spacecraft must have naturally outgrown its violent instincts. Maybe it's like Star Trek, where those beings are highly intelligent and agree to a more moral law to never interfere with developing species like ours, but that assumes a huge chunk of alien morality, which might not even be real. On the other hand, there is an explanation that is most bone-chilling and melancholic. Maybe there was a civilization that lived or died, they rose, they built huge societies, and when they inevitably fell, they did it entirely alone in the dark. Since the Milky Way is 100,000 light-years across and has existed for over 10 billion years, the window of time in which civilization exists is quite brief. Frank Drake, the legendary astrophysicist who created the Drake equation, happened to grow a rare orchard in his home. He had one specific orchard that would flower for only 1 or 2 days a year, and then bloom, and then the bloom would vanish, only briefly the following year. He used this beautiful flower as a tragic analogy for the cosmos to a suggestion that civilizations are like rare orchards, and that they spark into existence like the flower and only flower brightly for a brief moment, and then they die. According to the Fermi Paradox, which is the great filter, it is an evolutionary or technological barrier that is statistically almost impossible to guess. This is the question that is still there for humanity. Does the great filter lie in our past, or is it waiting in the future? If it's in the future, we are in huge danger because it implies that life simply arises across galaxies and species frequently reach our current level of development. They discover everything, but then they hit a wall, and in the future, the filter stops them from ever becoming a true spacefaring or multi-planetary species. What do you think is the truth of the universe? Let us know in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel because we explain everything related to our galaxy and beyond.